Welcome to Mick's ACL Hot Minute, episode 2. This one is a really interesting one. I know I say this every time, every week, but this one's a really different in terms of cross-education. Now, I have talked about cross-education before. I've written about it on the ACL Hub. I've got a blog there, so go back and check that out. I'll put it into the show notes and the links below so you can have a deeper dive. But this paper in particular looks at the role of cross-education in respect to balance training of the healthy, uninjured limb as opposed to strength training. So a really neat, interesting study here in the cross-education space. So this paper was called The Effects of Contralateral Limb Cross-Education Training on Post-Surgical Rehab, Outcomes in Patients with ACL Reconstruction, a randomized control trial conducted by Liu and colleagues. So why cross-education is really helpful, and what we've started to discover is that in previous studies we have been able to see when load was appropriate, the neurological and the central nervous system changes that will, target will have a knock-on effect to the whole entire limb, including the injured limb and the ACL reconstructed limb, are really positive. So in essence, like, we can't make the injured side stronger and grow, so to speak, but we can hold on as best as we can some of the central nervous system inputs to that muscle or the joint and so on and so forth. So yeah, really, really cool findings in this paper. So this group of authors had 40 ACL reconstructed people, all with a hamstring graft, their own tissue autografts, aged between 18 and 45. Now, the intervention of the cross-education protocol started at about weeks 5 to 6 on average, once the person was walking comfortably without crutches. When that time came, they were then randomized into 2 groups. So we had the cross-education group plus their usual rehab, or the usual rehab group. So not a complete control group, but the continued rehab. Now, the cross-education group, so I'll get to them in a second. Both groups did 3 times a week training for 6 weeks once that intervention period started. But the cross-education group added structured balance training on the healthy leg, so the good leg, at about that 6-week mark. And they did that for 6 weeks, 3 times a week for 6 weeks, till they roughly got to about 11 or 12 weeks post-op. The program itself, the cross-education program, ran through some progressive stages, starting with really simple single leg balance tasks, then adding more challenging tasks with their eyes closed, unstable surfaces, and eventual dual task activities like throwing and catching a ball while balancing. And they tested the patients before the intervention started at about the 5 or 6 week post-op period, and then they tested again once the intervention period was finished 6 weeks later. So in short, it's a pretty short-term study and just a really small snapshot as to how we can intervene people's balance, strength and control and coordination in the really early stages. So it doesn't sort of reflect the whole entire process through ACL, but it does basically focus in on one really critical period in those first 3 months post-op. So what were the key findings? And this is the really big one. Both groups improved, no doubt about that. So the group that did their usual rehab that was designated to them by their physiotherapist, they got better over that 6-week intervention period. But the cross-education group, so the group that did balance training on their healthy leg, improved significantly across all the outcome measures they looked at. So knee function scores improved significantly more, knee range of movement improved significantly more, markers that identified quadriceps strength and activation improved substantially more, and dynamic balance improved really, really significantly. Even when they were measuring plantar pressures of the feet in the patients, they improved significantly greater as well. And importantly, there were no adverse events recorded in either group. So look, this is a really neat study. It's a full text paper, and you can go back and download it, read it, and get a little bit more specifics about the details of the interventions given. And I certainly urge you to do that. But as a outside looking in, and a nice little snapshot of how we can help our patients get better outcomes as early as possible, this is a really, really simple way to do that. So for me, sort of take homes from this would be, it's just a low hanging fruit for our patients to introduce simple balance training on the healthy leg in those first few weeks post-op. And I would argue that even these people can and should start from day one, or at least in week 1, even if they don't have comfortable gait yet, or even if they're still on crutches. Like, that healthy leg is a beautiful resource. And we've seen that perfectly in the strength randomized controlled trials where we introduce heavy strength training early to maintain strength quality through to that 3-month mark. So I don't see why we can't balance training of the healthy leg earlier than 6 weeks as they did in this study. But, like we can't be, it's easy for me to sort of sit here and be a bit critical and say we should do this, should do that. The studies are done in for a particular reason. But that would be my 2 cents worth, is that we can and should introduce this stuff early. Likewise with strength training, there's no harms in adding healthy loads to that healthy leg as early as possible to help that central nervous system continue to tick along. So that for me would be something that I would certainly integrate. And importantly for me, this is a bit of an eye-opener, is that not only do we see the cross-education benefits in strength, but this is the first time I've actually seen it play out with balance and control and coordination. So yeah, it's a great study. It's going to certainly change my clinical practice as of tomorrow. So I'll be introducing this to my patients that I see post-op early. Yeah, links to the full text article in the description below. Tell your colleagues, share it with your mates, and have a read for it yourself. And as always, I'd love to hear your feedback about my video content, my educational content. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you. But until the next episode, that's Mick's ACL Hot Minute.